Hi guys, sorry that this video came late. Today we're going to be talking about my definition of success as well as the components of that success. Now I know in the previous video I mentioned that we'll talk about obsessing over success. However, after reviewing my notes, I realized that I had to talk about this first, otherwise the next portion wouldn't have made any sense. So let's get started. So in the last video, we talked about what is true success, ultimate success, as well as where the intent for success came from. Just as a quick recap, true success requires that there has to be true success, partial success, as well as failure. We ultimately said that there's no such thing as ultimate success, because all paths to success ultimately start contradicting each other, as well as there is no particular universal path for every single person. The third part is intent for success, and it comes from many different sources. Today we are going to focus on one primary one, which, believe it or not, actually does encompass everything else. So, what is my definition for success? It is to help your offspring have offspring that help their offspring. For me, success ultimately comes in the form of evolutionary success, and that means helping your offspring have offspring that help their offspring. Now that sounds a little bit like a mouthful, and it might take a little bit of time for you to wrap your head around it. But I will get into the various components and how this actually breaks down into the different kinds of successes that we can have. So let's break this down first and foremost. The first criteria for this is that you have to help your offspring. Consider this. If you are not able to survive, you cannot have offspring. More specifically, if you are not able to survive long enough that you are capable of producing offspring, it means that evolutionarily speaking, you have not succeeded in producing offspring, and thus you have failed. So the first goal for evolutionary success is that you have to be able to survive. Now the second portion of it comes down to each individual. All of us ultimately aim to be happier. Evolutionarily speaking, things that make us happier are more likely to be things that allow us to give a better quality of life for ourselves as well as for our offspring, therefore maximizing our chances of reproductive success. For example, I could have a small house, but if I had a larger house that perhaps say had servants to help to run the household, then it is a lot easier for me to live my life. And by having it easier for me to live my life, it makes it easier for me to have children. And said children are also going to have an evolutionary advantage because they're starting off with things that some other people do not necessarily have. And as such, they have a much better chance of having reproductive success. Therefore, things that are generally going to make me happier in life in general are also more likely to increase the quality of life. By increasing the quality of life, it means that we have a much better chance of achieving reproductive success. And that's why this is the second success factor. Here is the third form of success, and that is achieving what you've set out to achieve. This is particular to us as humans. Animals in general are driven by their nature, and therefore they do not necessarily have very many long-term plans. However, as humans, we have been given a brain that is capable of predicting and forecasting and making sense of the world around us. And therefore, what we choose for our future is what we would like to achieve. And so being able to achieve what we desire in our future is part of what makes us successful, evolutionarily speaking, as a species. For example, when we wanted safety, we banded together. When we banded together, we had the trouble of food. So we sought to do something about that. So first we tried being nomadic, which means that we went around the fields, we hunted animals, moving from pasture to pasture, place to place, in order to get the food that we needed. Eventually we realized that actually planting roots into a particular area would have actually been better. And thus this is why we started agriculture. And with the development of agriculture, this is where we developed our science. Or actually more accurately, we developed the art of war. But that's besides the point. This cycle goes on and on and on, and ultimately what I'm trying to get at is that when we as a species have set our minds on something that we want to achieve, achieving that allowed us to gain so-called an evolutionary success. Therefore, when it comes to our own personal lives as well, this applies in the same way. If I wanted to build a YouTube channel in 2 years that I could start pointing people to explain why I thought the things that I do, and then I actually manage to achieve it, that for me is a form of success. I chose a goal and I'm making my way steadily progressing towards it. Of course, during this process, I would still have a lot of obstacles. I have a lot of things that I'm trying to work through. I'm trying to figure out things as I go along. But even that said, as long as I am making some form of progress, ultimately every step that I'm taking, no matter how small it is ultimately getting me towards that particular area. And here's the thing, I did not say that I needed to have 1 million subscribers. That's out of my control. But what is in my control is that I consistently produce content. Now I'm struggling with the consistency part, and I will continue to be working on that. But as long as I commit myself to producing these videos, that no matter what happens, whether I'm tired or whether there's work or whether there's a lot of things happening in the background as well, my ultimate commitment is to make these videos and make this success actually happen by the end of 2 years. I started in February 2020, and by the end of February 2022, which is an interesting number, come to think of it, I'm looking to have a channel that has roughly 300 videos. I'm not sure if I will actually have 300 videos, whether there's going to be more, most probably is going to be less, but nonetheless that is my target. 3 videos every week. If I can't make it, I try to play catch up, so on and so forth. Anyway, this segment is getting a bit long. Let's come back to the main topic. So at the end of the day, success is what you define it to be, in the sense of you achieving the goals that you've set out for yourself. While these goals might ultimately change, the fact of the matter is that as long as you're progressing, as long as you're making some form of progress towards that goal, you are contributing to your own eventual success. The final aspect of this is about reproduction, which means we are talking about genetic success. So what I mean by this is that you have offspring, you have children, but it goes beyond that. At this point in the video, I'd like to break this down so that it is easier for you to try to understand where I'm getting at. So let's start with the first generation. Remember, the aim of evolutionary success is to be able to have continual reproductive success. So here's how I look at it. Suppose you have children, but you do nothing to educate them about the world. You are probably not going to give them a very good competitive advantage. And therefore, evolutionarily speaking, or genetically speaking, you are not successful. Therefore, you must teach your children. You must help your children become reproductive successes as well. Therefore, you are teaching your kids to have kids. If we just stop there, however, would your children know what to teach their children? Not necessarily, because you did not necessarily equip them with the skills to teach their children. Therefore, you have to make sure that you teach your children to teach their children to be reproductive successes. So this is how it goes. You are the first generation. You need to teach your children how to teach your grandchildren how to help your great-grandchildren become reproductive successes. And it breaks down into this format. You mentor your children to teach your grandchildren to help them have children, to help them become reproductive successes. This goes down 4 generations into your great-grandchildren. And this for me is the minimum, because here's how it works. By you teaching your children how to teach, you are essentially equipping them with the skills to pass the ability on. So for every 4 generations, the head of the generation chain is the one who transmits the knowledge down to the 2nd level. The 2nd level then becomes equipped to be able to pass it on to the 3rd level, and so on and so forth. And therefore, this is how you are able to transmit the ability to be reproductively successful throughout the generations. This is my idea of genetic success. I hope that made sense. So as a quick summary, let's recap the 4 different kinds of evolutionary success. The first is that you survive. The second is that you become happier. The third is achieving what it is that you set out to do. And the fourth is to ensure that your offspring is able to help their offspring have offspring. Or in short, reproductive success. Here's the interesting part that I'd like you to consider. Think back to the model of the 3 brains. We have the reptilian brain, the monkey brain, and the human brain. Do you see how number 1, 2, and 3 actually correspond to the reptilian, monkey, and human brain respectively? The reptilian brain's purpose is to ensure our survival, and thus it fulfills the first factor. The monkey brain is where we derive our happiness from. We are happier when our 4 neurochemicals are higher, and when our stressful neurochemicals are lower, that being adrenaline and cortisol. Whereas the third factor factors in specifically for humans. We are the only kind of being that has the ability to look into the future and actually do something about it. We are able to shape our futures the way that we choose to shape them. Not all of us practice using that ability, but all of us in general have that. So number 1, 2, and 3 correspond to our 3 brains. The last one, reproductive success, correlates to our genetics. And in a sense, this is about fulfilling the core purpose of our entire machinery. The entire reason why we have a reptilian, monkey, and human brain all combined together, it is to contribute to this final purpose, which is genetic success. At the end of the day, every part of yourself, whether it's your eyebrow or your toe or your nails, your bones, your organs, and whatsoever, they are all coming together to reproduce. That is the entire point of our functions. That is the entire point of our bodies. Our bodies, in a sense, are a way for our genetic information to be passed on. And hence, this is our genetic success. So there we have it. We have the 4 types of successes, which are survival, happiness, achieving, and reproduction. And how they are tied to the 4 things that drive us: the lizard brain, the monkey brain, human brain, and our genetics. And now, this is where I go into why it is that we are obsessed over these 4 successes. Unfortunately, time is up, and you'll have to wait for the next video, which I promise will be out soon. Thank you for your understanding. So what do you think? Do you agree with my definition that we are all driven by our evolutionary success? And that evolutionary success can be broken down into these 4 factors? Let me know down in the comment sections below. If you found this content useful or helpful, consider giving it a like. It helps YouTube to know that this is the kind of content that you are looking for, and therefore it is more likely to recommend these kinds of content to you. If you know somebody who might be interested in this kind of information, do consider sharing it with them. And if you'd like more content from myself about how to handle multiple interests, multiple relationships, and multiple approaches to finance, consider subscribing to the channel. You can also hit the notification bell so that you will be informed when I do manage to upload these videos. And above all, I hope that this content will ultimately be useful for you. Thank you so much for watching. My name is Gerald, and this is Multi-Loving Model. Be happy in diversity. Cheers.